folks, when I was a kid, my dad would sometimes order a Southern Comfort Manhattan if we went to a fancy dinner or something. And as a kid, I thought that was pretty cool. I think one of the reasons I got into cocktails in the first place is because I thought it was cool that my dad knew about vermouth and whiskey and had cocktails in fancy glasses, and I wanted to be cool like him. But still, Manhattans never really hit the spot for me. What I realize now is Southern Comfort is super duper sweet. In fact, it's categorized as a spiced whiskey flavored liqueur. It's not even whiskey. So I think my dad actually had a major sweet tooth, just like I do. Now don't worry, I'm not gonna start putting Southern Comfort in my Manhattans, but I do think I'd like to try to sweeten them up just a little bit. And to do that, I decided to add a little maraschino because I love it, and it'll sweeten up this Manhattan just a tiny amount. Now this is lovely, but I just want it just a little bit sweeter. So today I've got 2 different maraschino liqueurs to taste. We're gonna try them out in some Manhattans, see which one we prefer. Let's go. Now there are 2 maraschino liqueurs available to me. The Luxardo, which has always been my go-to, sort of the standard maraschino. In fact, until recently, I didn't even realize that there were other maraschinos available. The other maraschino we have is Maraska. It comes from Croatia and it's supposed to be delicious. Besides those 2, I know that Bowls makes one, and I know that Lazzaroni makes one. I think there are a couple others out there on the market, but these are the only 2 that I could really get. So let's taste them and see what we think. Now, when I look these up online, the word is that the Luxardo is a little bit sweeter and that the Maraska is a little bit more flavorful, I guess, a little more cherry flavored. But let's see what we think. Okay, so this is the Luxardo. And it's funny with maraschino because, they don't really smell like cherry. They have a very floral aroma, sort of and more like an almond aroma because they put the pits from the cherries in as well, and that gives it sort of an almond flavor because I guess almonds and cherries are related. Anyway, it's very thick, sort of unctuous. The cherry is sort of an aftertaste almost. Sometimes I get a little bit of almost like a chocolate flavor to it. A little bit of cinnamon. It's sort of a spicy, flowery, almost like what you might call a funkiness to it. It's pretty good. I don't know that I would really sip it on its own much, but it is a very interesting flavor, and one that I've liked for a long time. But let's try the Maraska and see how different it is. All right, Maraska. Slightly less flowery maybe on the nose, but still not really like a cherry smell, it's more like a cherry brandy kind of smell almost. A little thinner. It maybe is a little less sweet, and maybe a little bit more of those sort of, I don't know, cinnamon clove kind of. It's not spicy in the sense of being hot, but just like those sort of baking spice kind of notes. And again, like cherry, sort of a cherry vibe, but not like super cherry flavor. It's really interesting. So these are pretty similar. It's pretty hard to pick apart the differences in these to me. I would say that the Luxardo is a little bit sweeter, a little bit thicker, but they both have a similar, perfumey, flowery aroma. The flavor isn't so much cherry as it is the sort of funky cinnamon clove cherry spiced liqueur or something. They're both delicious. Anyway, I'm going to push forward with my plan and make a couple of slightly sweeter Manhattans, and let's see if these maraschinos add a little something. Let's go. did it. We made some Manhattans, just sweetened Manhattans, I guess we'll call them. I know that some people will make a sweeter Manhattan by using the juice from the cherry jar, and I think that's a super valid thing to do, but I wanted to try Maraschino, so let's do it. First up is Luxardo. Lovely Manhattan. This hits the notes for me. Just a little tiny bit sweeter. The finish that you get from the Maraschino, that sort of bitter almond, flowery cherry note at the end. That's the finish for me on these Manhattans. And that comes from the Maraschino, and I think when I drink them, normally it's got a much drier finish, like the rye takes over the finish, and the bitterness from the vermouth gives it just a slightly bitter finish. That is what I react against when I usually drink Manhattan. So that's lovely. Let's try Maraska. This one is not as sweet, slightly more bitter finish. Which I think is, like I said before, like what I sort of am fighting against in Manhattans. I think for the purposes of the Manhattan, I think I prefer the Luxardo. The Maraska just isn't quite as sweet, and it isn't like cutting back on that bitterness the way I wanted to. Fascinating. Yeah, going back to the Luxardo one, it's just that ever so slightly sweeter. And since I'm trying to sweeten up this Manhattan, that's sort of what I'm looking for. Now, this Maraska does have a lovely flavor, and I'm not saying that it's bad or you shouldn't use it. I'm just saying for the purposes of this experiment, I think I'm preferring the Luxardo. But you know what we could do? A bar I went to recently called Deadshot. They made me a Bensonhurst with actually a blend of Maraschinos in it. And you know, we could do the same. We could blend our two Maraschinos and maybe make the perfect blend to put in our Manhattan. I don't know. Let's give it a try. And there we have it. The blended Maraschino sweet Manhattan. Let's try it. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's lost that slight bitter note that the Maraska had. Sweet enough. It tempers the vermouth a little bit. It's still cherry at the end, but it's weirdly sort of neutral. It's almost like it cancels out both Maraschino's sort of bitter almond sort of qualities and sort of like neutralizes them both. That's pretty good. It's pretty subtle. Like the differences between these two Maraschinos are very subtle, and I think I might be, splitting hairs quite a bit to try and to make a determination between either of these. So I don't know. Going forward, I'll probably switch back one to the other and the blend and just see what works and see what doesn't. Anyway, Maraschino is delicious. I think either of these bottles would work fine in your home bar. Probably work in a variety of drinks. In fact, maybe a Hemingway daiquiri is in order. Maybe I'll do that soon. I think what I'd like to do is do sort of an occasional Manhattan series, sort of like I do with El Presidente when I get a new vermouth or get a different recipe to try or a variation. There's lots of Manhattan variations, of course. Then I can add to the series as I see fit. In fact, as you might know, I've just recently got a bunch of other rye, so I think next up in this series is going to be an affordable rye showdown, see which rye works best in Manhattan. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned, subscribe, comment below with your favorite variations, your experience with ryes and Manhattans and Maraschinos. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.